Hello, so today's video is all about Discotheque fragrances. I've been sent this sample set by a subscriber, Samantha, so thank you so much, Samantha, for letting me try out these fragrances. I have never tried anything from the brand before, and I'm just going to rank the fragrances in my order of preference at the end of the video too. So Discotheque fragrances were started in 2024 and they are actually based in LA and also in the UK. They have 7 fragrances on the market, and really the idea is that they are trying to channel 70s and 80s discos, or the idea of discos. And the sample set I think is quite innovative. It's sort of in this thing that almost looks like a cigarette packet, and when you open it you can see that the samples do actually look a little bit like cigarettes. I think this is really interesting branding because at the time in the 70s and 80s probably cigarettes were quite a common sight in discos, so I get the branding, but I also think it's an odd choice because today's market is perhaps not so enamoured with smoking. So the first fragrance is called Lola the Coat Check, and I think this is their most famous creation. This is the one that I've heard the most about. So the brand describes this one as velvet roses, smoky sandalwood, and also white chocolate. So I was quite intrigued by this one and I was really excited to try this. So this opens to me with a powdery, slightly green, but also sweet sandalwood. And there's also a bit of a coolness and a sparkle to this, which I think is the cardamom. As this begins to dry down, it transforms into something more lipsticky. It's almost slightly dusty, this fragrance, as it dries down, but there still is that sandalwood and also the remnants of the cardamom, but they're definitely much less prominent as this begins to dry down. The final dry down is really a much gentler version of the rest of the fragrance alongside a bit more of the sweetness. I think there's caramel listed in this fragrance, and I don't get caramel per se, but there's definitely a slightly almost high-pitched sweetness here in the dry down. I actually quite like this one. I think it's something that I prefer when I'm smelling it in the air as opposed to smelling it on my skin. I think this smells much better just in a cloud than it does close up. I really like the lipsticky elements to this one, and I think this one is a definite like. So that's Lola at Coat Check. So the second fragrance is called Call for a Good Time, and the brand says amber, violet, yuzu and ylang ylang. So if I were imagining this fragrance as a colour, I might imagine the colour orange. Really in the beginning I get something quite air freshener like, and usually I get that kind of vibe when there's apple listed or apple blossom, and I think here it might be the yuzu combining with the violet. After a few moments the florals really begin to dominate, so the jasmine and the ylang ylang become far more prominent. The florals are actually really nice, they're quite realistic, and it begins to smell a little bit more yellowy. It's warm and it's sunny and it's dense. By the dry down though, this one is again smelling a little bit like an air freshener to me. I like the mid of this and there were some good elements there, but I don't think this one's for me, so that's Cool for a Good Time. The next one is called All Night Until First Light, and the brand described this one as grapefruit, saffron and salt. So this opens with a bit of pink grapefruit at the beginning. It's very bright and citrusy and almost slightly aquatic feeling too. As this begins to dry down, it becomes denser and it becomes slightly peppery. I think there might be a slight bit of cologne here. I don't think there's anything too much, but I definitely get a bit of a cologne feel from this fragrance. It definitely does have quite a strong aquatic feel and the fruitiness is very prominent. This fragrance is quite mild and close to skin throughout though, and I really do like that the grapefruit stays right into the dry down. This fragrance feels almost effervescent, which I guess might be the pepper combining with the citrus, but I really don't get anything too peppery here. I think it's a really nicely balanced fragrance. The feeling I get from this overall is a feeling of pink neon. It just smells so bright and fresh and lively and zingy, and I guess that is the idea of a first light, isn't it? I think this one feels quite simple, but it's interesting and well done. So that's All Night Until First Light. So the next fragrance, I can't quite believe that the brand has called it this, but I'm not saying it because I know what it means. If you speak French or if you have any kind of French understanding, you might also know what this means. So yeah, this is On the Dance Floor. And this one is a really odd fragrance. So this is described by the brand as iris, powder and jasmine. And to me, this one in the opening opens with iris or perhaps even orris. It's very, very powdery. It's slightly sweet as well, but there's also a lot of violet leaf here. If you've smelt the violet leaf that you smell in fragrances like Dior Fahrenheit, the old version of Dior Fahrenheit, then you'll instantly recognise that kind of almost slightly diesel-like violet leaf. This gives the fragrance a slightly metallic twang almost. It makes me think a little bit of a glitter ball on a dance floor, this fragrance, which I don't know whether that's actually the intention, but that's what I think of. It also does get more powdery as it dries down, and it's also slightly sweet. I don't really smell the other florals per se. I don't necessarily smell jasmine or anything else that's listed, but the powderiness is really what you get most of all, alongside that slightly diesel fuel, kind of very mild diesel fuel kind of violet leaf. I think really in the dry down, it's all about the powder. It's the muskiness, the powderiness, and also a slightly odd smelling sandalwood. I think for me, this one is not necessarily something that I would wear, but I can't deny that it's very interesting. So that is on the dance floor. So the next fragrance is called Heathens, Cowboys and the Santa Ana Winds. And the brand describes this one as green tea, sandalwood and amber. So my instant thought with this one is that it's another interpretation of Santal 33. If you smelt Santal 33 and you smell any dupe of Santal 33, you will have smelt this fragrance before. So this starts out with quite a sour feeling, sappy feeling, green sandalwood. There's a kind of slight spice to this alongside a bit of a coolness from some cardamom. I think I could best describe the sandalwood here as how people describe sandalwood as dill pickle sandalwood. It definitely does have that kind of slight spicy kick to it, and it just smells quite sour. In the dry down, it's less green, but it becomes more dusty, and alongside that there's a warmth from some cedarwood, which just adds to and amps up the dustiness, which I guess is what might be interpreted as the Santa Ana Winds. I think if you like the scent profile, you've probably smelt this before and probably done better. I think whatever aroma chemical the brand are using for their sandalwood, in this fragrance and perhaps in some of their others, I'm not enamoured with, and this one particularly for me just didn't hit the spot. So that is Heathens, Cowboys and the Santa Ana Winds. So the next fragrance is called Sweat, Tears, Paradise, and the brand described this one as absinthe, salty air and ocean mist. This fragrance actually makes me think of a home fragrance oil in an ocean fresh or an alpine fresh kind of scent, or perhaps even one of those blocks that you get to put in the bathroom that have that ocean fresh kind of scent. This fragrance smells very clean, it smells very white, and it smells almost crystalline. It makes me think of opening a jar of bath salts, a jar of very white feeling salt. Everything about this fragrance feels very white. It's clean, it's white floral, it's white woods, and there's also a slight feeling of powderiness in the dry down. I found this one absolutely fine. For an oceanic fragrance, I didn't hate this, but I think I'd prefer this as a home fragrance rather than something I would personally want to wear. So that's Sweat, Tears, Paradise. So the final fragrance is called Dark Temptation, and it's described by the brand as rose, leather and patchouli. So this fragrance was a shock when I first sprayed it. It's very dark, it's very leathery, it's almost tarry feeling, and it makes me think of maybe smelling leather but by a campfire. The rose here is incredibly dry feeling, and for the first part of the fragrance, that's really all you get of it. It's only as it dries down that it turns into something slightly sweeter, slightly more powdery, but still it does have a very kind of Middle Eastern dry feel to it overall. It actually makes me think of the rose you might smell in Turkish delight or even sort of other kind of Middle Eastern sweets. It's definitely not as sweet or as light and bright as you might smell of something like Turkish delight. It is rose water but concentrated, that kind of rose. There is a fruitiness here, but it's incredibly dark. It actually makes me think of the plum that is in things like Dior's Poison. I think this fragrance is going to be a hard wear for a lot of people because the tarriness is very extreme, and that goes on for a good 20 minutes before you get anything else out of this fragrance. It does just smell smoky, heavy, like a campfire, and the rose just doesn't come through until a long time in. I found this fragrance to be much more wearable in the final dry down, really transformed into something more rosy and more incense-like, but I still think this one is going to be a hard sell for most people. I think this is not going to be an instant love for most people. I think you have to like really dark, really kind of almost smoky feeling fragrances. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. So that's Dark Temptation. So just to summarise, I'm going to rank these now in my order of preference. So number 7 would be Heathens, Cowboys and the Santa Ana Winds. I'm just fed up of smelling Santal 33 dupe. And this fragrance actually reminded me of the same sandalwood that's used in Who is Elijah fragrances, which is a brand that I just didn't get on with when I sampled them. So that's why that one is in the lowest place. Number 6 is Cool for a Good Time. I really, in general, like those types of fragrance notes. I really normally like sunny florals, but this just smelled so much like an air freshener that it put me off. So that is number 6, Cool for a Good Time. Number 5, I'm putting as Dark Temptation. I think the tarriness is very extreme in that fragrance, and that's why that one is quite low. But I do really like the dry down. I really like the incense and the rose at the end. But I know that that is not something that appeals to the majority of people. Number 4, I'm putting as On the Dance Floor. This one, incredibly rude name, but I did think that it was inventive and I thought it was really odd the way it smelled slightly diesel-like to me. So yeah, that's why it's number 4, because it's inventive. I don't find it that wearable, but I think it's a really interesting fragrance. Number 3 is Sweat Tears Paradise. Even though I found that fragrance to be probably better suited to a home fragrance, I did like the clean feel of it and I like the freshness of it. I'm not normally someone who likes sort of salty fragrances, but I did like the bath salts clean feel of that fragrance. Number 2, I think I'm putting in as the classic Lola at the coat check. I just really like the lipsticky feel in the mid of the fragrance. The dry down was less for me, but it does smell great in the air, that one. So that's Lola at the coat check. And number 1 for me was All Night at First Light. I think this fragrance is just so bright feeling. It really fulfills the brief of what it's trying to achieve. It does feel like dawn. It does feel like pink neon. And for that reason, that one is number 1. So that's All Night at First Light. So please do let me know if you've tried any of these and what you think of them. And also thank you again to my subscriber, Samantha, for sending these to me and letting me try these fragrances. So if you have found this video useful, then please do press the like button and consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.